Isabella Carter was born on a rainy spring evening in a modest hospital room, her cries filling the air like the first notes of a song her parents would never forget. For Thomas and Grace Carter, she was nothing less than a miracle. They had prayed, worked, and sacrificed for years before she arrived, and from the very first moment they held her, their world shifted forever. Thomas, a man of few words and calloused hands from years of work as a mechanic, held his daughter with trembling arms, whispering promises of protection and guidance. Grace, gentle but strong, cradled the baby against her chest, her eyes shining with gratitude and dreams of the life their little family would build together. Her earliest years were filled with warmth. Their house was not large, but it overflowed with laughter, bedtime stories, and the smell of Grace's home-cooked meals. Thomas often spent evenings teaching Isabella little lessons: how to tie her shoes, how to water plants gently, how to say thank you, even for the smallest acts of kindness. Grace filled her daughter's days with patience, correcting her when she strayed, but always with love, reminding her that respect for others was the foundation of a good life. Isabella adored them both, clinging to their presence and beaming with pride whenever she was praised for doing something right. In her child's mind, her parents were giants, safe, strong, and unshakable. But childhood, as it always does, passed faster than anyone expected. By the time Isabella entered her teenage years, the closeness she once felt to her parents began to fray. The outside world, with all its temptations, promises, and dangers, started to call her more loudly than the safe walls of home. At school, she made friends who seemed to value freedom above all else, who laughed at rules and mocked the idea of listening to parents. Isabella wanted desperately to be accepted, and she found herself caught between two worlds: the steady, guiding hands of Thomas and Grace, and the thrilling, rebellious pull of her peers. The change was gradual but undeniable. Where she once shared stories of her day at dinner, she now sat in silence, eyes fixed on her phone. Where she once asked for advice, she now rolled her eyes at Thomas's words, muttering, "You don't understand." Grace tried to reach her, reminding her of the values they had always taught. But Isabella's patience grew shorter with every reminder. The girl who once clung to her parents' presence now felt suffocated by it. One evening, the tension finally erupted. Isabella had returned home hours later than promised, her clothes smelling faintly of smoke and perfume. Grace confronted her, her voice trembling between fear and anger. "Where have you been? Do you have any idea how worried we were?" Isabella, tired of the endless questions, snapped back. "I'm not a child anymore. You can't control me every second of my life." Thomas, standing silently in the doorway, spoke in his steady tone. "Respect isn't about age, Isabella. It's about love and responsibility. When you ignore us, you don't just break rules, you break trust." But Isabella refused to listen. She stormed into her room, slamming the door so hard the frame shook, her heart pounding with both guilt and defiance. In her mind, her parents were holding her back, chaining her to outdated expectations. Unable to see that she was ready for independence, her rebellion grew bolder. She lied about her whereabouts, skipped assignments at school, and spent more time with Ryan, a boy whose charm and confidence made her feel alive in ways her parents' safe home never could. Ryan promised her excitement, freedom, and love without conditions. He became the voice she listened to, drowning out Thomas's steady guidance and Grace's worried pleas. When Ryan told her that her parents were too strict, that they didn't understand the modern world, Isabella believed him. One Friday, she told her parents she was sleeping over at her friend's to study for exams. Instead, she joined Ryan and his friends at a party miles away. The music was deafening, the air thick with smoke, and bottles clinked in careless hands. For the first time, Isabella felt like she belonged to a world her parents could never touch. She laughed too loudly, danced too wildly, and let herself forget about the two people waiting for her at home. Someone snapped a photo of her laughing with a drink in hand, and by the next morning, it had made its way online. Thomas found out before Isabella woke up. The disappointment on his face when he showed her the picture was heavier than any punishment. "Is this who you want to become?" he asked quietly. His calmness stung more than shouting ever could. Grace was less controlled. "Do you know how dangerous that was? Do you even think about what could happen to you?" Isabella, cornered and ashamed, lashed out. Stop treating me like I'm 5. You don't trust me. You don't let me breathe. I'm not like you. I don't want your boring life." The room fell silent after those words. Thomas lowered his gaze, as though the weight of her rejection had crushed something inside him. Grace turned away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Isabella left the house, slamming the door, her heart torn between triumph and an ache she didn't want to name. She wandered through the night with Ryan, pretending not to hear the echo of her parents' voices in her mind. But freedom is never as glamorous as it seems. Over the months, Ryan's promises unraveled. His affection turned careless, his respect thinner each day. He belittled her in front of friends, made choices that left her uneasy, and eventually betrayed her outright, leaving her humiliated and alone. Isabella, brokenhearted, couldn't bear to return home and face the truth that her parents had been right. Instead, she drifted in silence, pretending to be fine while inside she was crumbling. At school, her grades slipped. Her teacher's patience wore thin, and whispers followed her through the halls. She began to feel like a stranger in every place she once belonged. Friends who once laughed with her moved on, while Ryan, the boy she had sacrificed so much for, treated her like she was disposable. Nights were sleepless, her thoughts heavy with regret, but pride kept her from going back home. She told herself her parents would never forgive her, that they were too disappointed to ever see her the same way again. That it was during this fragile time that life delivered another blow. Thomas collapsed one evening after work, his heart strained from years of endless labor. The diagnosis was grim, a heart condition that would change everything. When Isabella walked into his hospital room, she saw Grace sitting beside him, holding his hand, whispering words of comfort through her tears. For the first time in months, Isabella's anger dissolved. She sat quietly at the edge of the bed, guilt crashing over her like a storm. Thomas opened his eyes and, weak though he was, smiled faintly. "You're here," he whispered. Her voice broke as she said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for everything. For the lies, for the shouting, for not listening." He reached for her hand with fragile fingers. "I only ever wanted you safe, Bella. I wanted you to know your worth." In that moment, Isabella's world shifted. The shield she had mistaken for chains was finally revealed. Her parents weren't holding her back. They had been protecting her all along. The walls she thought were prison bars had always been arms stretched wide, ready to catch her whenever she fell. Sitting there between them, hearing the steady beeping of machines keeping her father alive, Isabella realized that love was not about freedom without limits, but about care, sacrifice, and the kind of protection that sometimes feels suffocating until you understand its depth. That night, she cried herself to sleep in a chair beside his bed, Grace's hand gently resting on her shoulder. She had thought she was too grown to need her parents, but now she felt like a child again, afraid, fragile, desperate for the safety she had once taken for granted. And for the first time in a long time, she whispered a prayer of gratitude, not for freedom, but for the love that still surrounded her despite everything she had done to push it away. After that night in the hospital, Isabella began to see the world differently. Every word her parents had spoken, every rule they had enforced, every warning they had given began to make sense. She realized that love was not merely a feeling. It was action, sacrifice, and patience. She returned to school with a renewed determination, tackling her studies with a focus she had never felt before. Teachers noticed her transformation. The classmates who had once mocked her rebellious streak now looked on in quiet admiration. Isabella felt proud, not because she was better than anyone else, but because she was finally living in alignment with the values that had been instilled in her since birth. She spent more time with Grace and Thomas, listening to their stories of hardship, their memories of youth, and the quiet lessons that only experience could teach. She asked questions she had once rolled her eyes at, and she began to internalize the wisdom behind every word. Thomas, though weak from his illness, smiled more often, seeing his daughter grow not just in age, but in character. Grace's eyes sparkled with pride and relief. Isabella's heart swelled each time she realized that their love had never wavered, even when she had been at her most defiant. Life, however, was not done testing her. The lessons of betrayal and consequence remained etched in her memory. Isabella knew she could not erase her mistakes, nor should she wish to. Instead, she used them as guides, teaching her the boundaries of trust, and the value of self-respect. Ryan's memory became a cautionary tale, a reminder that charm could mask dishonesty and that freedom without responsibility was a dangerous illusion. She no longer blamed her parents for her youthful mistakes. She blamed herself, and with that responsibility came growth. As Isabella entered college, she began to understand the complexities of adult life. She juggled coursework, part-time jobs, and her relationships, learning that discipline and perseverance were as vital as passion and desire. She forged friendships with peers who shared her ambition, who respected her values, and who inspired her to dream bigger. In those years, she began volunteering at a local community center, helping children who faced struggles not unlike her own younger self. She became a mentor, realizing that the wisdom passed down from her parents could now be used to guide others. Every lesson she had learned, the importance of honesty, the weight of choices, and the enduring power of love, became a tool to shape the next generation. Through college, she also rebuilt her relationship with Ryan, not as a lover, but as a lesson in boundaries and forgiveness. She forgave him, not for his sake, but for her own peace, understanding that resentment only chained the heart. This act of forgiveness gave her a clarity she had never known before. She realized that to move forward, one must release the burden of past mistakes. Graduation day arrived, a culmination of years of struggle, learning, and growth. Isabella scanned the crowd for her parents, her eyes finally settling on Thomas and Grace, their faces glowing with tears of pride. When their eyes met, she felt the culmination of all her experiences, the rebellion, the mistakes, the heartbreak, the lessons, fuse into a single truth. Love is enduring, and wisdom is earned through struggle. After college, Isabella returned home briefly before starting her career in social work, determined to help families and children navigate the same challenges she had faced. Her parents, now older but still full of life and guidance, supported her fully, proud that their daughter had grown into a woman of integrity and compassion. She rented her first apartment near the city center, decorating it with photographs of her family, small reminders of the foundation that had shaped her. It was during this time that Isabella met David, a kind-hearted man with patience and understanding. Their courtship was slow, deliberate, and respectful. David admired Isabella not only for her beauty and intellect, but for the way she treated her parents with ongoing respect. He listened as she shared stories of her youth, the mistakes, the rebellion, the consequences, and never judged her. Instead, he encouraged her, supported her, and loved her. Eventually, they married in a modest ceremony with Thomas and Grace beaming proudly at their daughter, whose journey had come full circle. A few years later, Isabella and David welcomed their daughter, Lily, into the world. From the moment she was born, Isabella felt the weight and wonder of parenthood. Every late-night cry, every tiny hand that grasped her finger, every soft sigh became a reminder of what it meant to love unconditionally. She understood her parents in ways she never had before. She now carried the same fear, hope, and unwavering devotion that Thomas and Grace had once carried for her. As Lily grew, Isabella found herself repeating many of the same lessons her parents had taught her. She encouraged respect, responsibility, and honesty, but also discovered the delicate balance between discipline and understanding. She remembered her own rebellious years and sought to guide Lily gently, without stifling her spirit. And yet, adolescence has its own language of defiance. At 14, Lily began to test boundaries. She stayed out late, argued about curfews, and questioned every rule Isabella set. "You don't understand me, Mom. This is my life, not yours," she shouted one night, echoing the very words Isabella had once spoken to Thomas and Grace. Isabella paused, stunned by the familiarity of the defiance. Her heart ached with empathy and recognition. The cycle had repeated itself, yet she was determined to navigate it with patience. That night, she called Grace, seeking guidance and perspective. "Mom," she whispered, "I finally understand what you went through with me. Lily says the same things I once said, and it hurts in a way I never imagined." Grace's voice, still calm and wise, came through the line. "It is your turn, Isabella, to be patient, to guide with love, and to trust that she will come back. What goes around comes around, my dear, but love always finds a way." Isabella hung up and sat quietly with Lily, reflecting on the past and present. She realized that while the challenges were similar, her response could be different. She approached Lily with empathy, gently setting boundaries while explaining the reasons behind them. Slowly, Lily began to understand. She saw that her mother's rules were not chains, but guidance rooted in love and experience. Through these years, Isabella also dealt with the gradual decline of Thomas's health. His heart condition worsened, and she became more involved in caring for him and supporting Grace. The shared family experiences, hospital visits, quiet evenings together, and small celebrations of life deepened her appreciation for the sacrifices her parents had made. She came to understand that the true inheritance of a family is not wealth or possessions, but love, wisdom, and the values passed from one generation to the next. As the family navigated these challenges, Isabella's own career flourished. She became known for her compassion and dedication in social work, helping countless families and children navigate hardships, often drawing on the lessons she had learned at home. Her experiences with rebellion, mistakes, and reconciliation allowed her to connect deeply with those she helped, providing not only guidance, but also hope. The years continued to pass. Lily matured, learning from her mother's example, and Isabella reflected often on her own journey. She understood now that mistakes were not failures, but lessons, and that love, steady, patient, and unwavering, could overcome even the deepest conflicts. And as Isabella watched Lily play in the yard, she thought of Thomas and Grace, their sacrifices, their enduring love, and the lessons they had imparted. She understood the full circle of life. Rebellion leads to mistakes, mistakes lead to learning, learning leads to growth, and growth allows love to continue through generations. Years had passed since Isabella had navigated her turbulent teenage years and reconciled with her parents. She had grown into a woman of compassion and resilience, shaped by her mistakes, heartbreaks, and the unwavering guidance of Thomas and Grace. Her life had found a rhythm, a balance between career, family, and personal growth, yet every day brought new lessons. Isabella often reflected on how her parents' love had been the steady anchor during the storms of adolescence, and she vowed to offer the same unwavering support to her daughter, Lily. Lily had grown into a spirited girl, full of curiosity and independence, much like Isabella had been. As she approached her teenage years, Isabella saw the first flickers of rebellion, late nights out with friends, small lies, and subtle challenges to boundaries. Isabella felt a pang of recognition, remembering her own defiant words and reckless adventures. She knew the path her daughter was about to take, the tension between freedom and guidance, and the lessons that awaited her. This awareness brought both worry and determination. She wanted Lily to learn from experience, but also hoped to guide her gently so that mistakes did not become wounds too deep to heal. Isabella and David faced the challenges of parenting together. David, patient and thoughtful, encouraged open dialogue and active listening. They implemented family meetings, where Lily could express her thoughts and frustrations without fear of immediate judgment. Isabella shared stories from her own youth, the wild parties, the heartbreak with Ryan, the guilt, and the eventual realization of her parents' unwavering love. These narratives weren't meant to instill fear, but to illuminate the path of cause and effect, the value of honesty, and the enduring strength of love. Lily listened, wide-eyed and contemplative, beginning to grasp the depth of her mother's experiences. One particularly stormy evening, Lily returned home hours later than expected. The rain soaked her hair, and Isabella's heart raced with worry. Yet, instead of anger, she approached Lily calmly, wrapping a towel around her shoulders and offering a cup of tea. "I was worried," Isabella said softly. "I need to know you're safe. Let's talk about where you were and what happened." Lily's defiance melted into tears, and she confessed her missteps, expecting the harsh scolding she had seen in friends' homes. Isabella listened, nodding and gently explaining why certain choices carried consequences, linking them to trust and respect, the lessons she had learned from her parents. That night, Lily slept with a newfound understanding of her mother's care and the importance of responsibility. While Isabella felt a quiet satisfaction in guiding without pushing too hard, life continued with its blend of joy and challenge. Isabella watched Lily navigate friendships, crushes, and school responsibilities, offering guidance when needed and stepping back when independence demanded space. Isabella's own career in social work flourished, allowing her to impact countless lives while modeling the lessons she had internalized from Thomas and Grace. She often reflected on the interconnectedness of generations, the mistakes, lessons, and love that flowed through time, and she understood more deeply than ever that karma and the consequences of choices are not merely abstract ideas but lived realities that shape character and destiny. David and Isabella nurtured their marriage through shared challenges and celebrations, teaching Lily the value of partnership grounded in mutual respect and communication. Together, they hosted family gatherings where laughter, stories, and lessons intertwined. Thomas's memory was honored through these rituals, keeping the essence of his guidance alive in the household. Grace, now older and more fragile, continued to offer wisdom and stories of her own youth, enriching the lives of both Isabella and Lily with lessons of resilience, kindness, and empathy. As Lily matured into adulthood, she began to exhibit the same compassion and thoughtfulness Isabella had developed through her own experiences. The guidance she received, coupled with her mother's lived example, allowed her to make wise choices, balance independence with responsibility, and cultivate meaningful relationships. Isabella saw the full circle of life unfolding: the defiance, the mistakes, the reconciliation, and the eventual understanding. She realized that parenting was not about control, but about equipping the next generation with the tools to navigate life with integrity and love. One evening, years later, as Isabella watched Lily prepare to leave for college, she felt a mix of pride, nostalgia, and gentle melancholy. She reflected on her own journey, how she had once run from her parents' guidance, how heartbreak and consequences had taught her humility, and how the wisdom of Thomas and Grace had ultimately shaped her into a strong, compassionate adult. Isabella understood now that life's lessons are cyclical, that love and guidance ripple through generations, and that the moral compass instilled in a child can guide them through storms if nurtured with patience and care. "Mom," Lily said softly, as they hugged goodbye, "I think I understand now why you always guide me. Even when I don't listen, I see the love behind it, and I hope I can be as wise as you one day." Isabella held her daughter close, feeling the continuity of love and wisdom she had inherited and would pass on. "You will be, Lily, and even when life tests you, remember that love, patience, and understanding will always guide you home." Isabella watched Lily walk toward her future, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew the cycles of rebellion, mistakes, and learning were inevitable, but she also knew that love, steady, patient, and unwavering, could transform challenges into growth. She thought of Thomas and Grace, grateful for the sacrifices they had made, and felt confident that the values they had imparted would continue through Lily, and perhaps beyond, shaping generations to come. In the quiet of her home, Isabella reflected on her life, the defiance of youth, the mistakes, the heartbreak, the reconciliation, the lessons learned, and the love that endured through it all. She understood now that life's purpose is not to avoid mistakes, but to learn, grow, and pass on wisdom. Through her journey, she had witnessed the power of karma, the strength of family bonds, and the enduring impact of love and guidance. She knew that even when children rebel, when mistakes are made, and when life feels uncertain, the values instilled through patience, compassion, and respect will shape the future in profound and lasting ways. And so, as the sun set over the Carter household, Isabella felt peace. The cycles of life, rebellion, learning, and love continued, but this time she was prepared. She had walked the path of mistakes and redemption, of heartbreak and healing, and now she stood ready to guide her daughter and the next generation with wisdom, patience, and unwavering love. The story of their family, a tale of challenges, growth, and the enduring power of human values, would carry on, a living testament to the lessons that life teaches when we are willing to listen, forgive, and love.